Okay, so here I am. I have one more row of flowers to go. So I'm going to do my one last row. I'm going to get everything ready for that. And to do this, again, even though I'm at the very end row, I still start with the center flower, and there's 5 flowers. So it'll be roughly right here on my red stripe on the background. And I'm going to just kind of go through and get rid of all of this. And I've had a couple of people ask me about leader cloths, and you know, I have them. Occasionally I use them, and I usually end up using them only when someone asks me if I can quilt a quilt for them and they've already trimmed it, so I have no excess. But when I set my quilts up, I am dashing in front of the camera here. I set them up so that they usually have a pretty decent, you know, I got a good 6 to 8 inches past my border on that. So I kind of set them up that way. And that way I have plenty to hold on to when I'm getting ready to get everything all set up. So I don't really use them. Every now and again I do. And every now and again I'll put it up on the top, or on even on a side piece. Oops. Pay attention to what I'm doing here. So this flower right here is the one that's in the center. So we're going to get you set up roughly right in here. And I want to see where that's at. I think I need to go just a hair higher. I do. So I've been using my Cutie Frame for about a year now. I've done probably close to 40 quilts on it so far. And you know, by going through and using it that much, and it sounds really silly, but by using it that much, you get a feel for what works and what doesn't. Everything works differently for everyone. And there's so many different ways of doing this. So just take your time. I'm just going to kind of show you a little bit about how I go about doing it. Let me get the back rolled up on this one. And so now we're going to get the front set up. Get my clamps on. And again, I clamp it so it's comfortably tight, I don't want it drum tight. And now I'm ready to roll. So I'm going to continue around again, leaving about 1/4 inch. So some of these are going to get a little goofy, and maneuvering sometimes is really quite fun, especially in this little studio space. Oops. I can just see my fingernail mark is right there, so that's about where I need to go. Like that. And I'm reaching quite a bit around this camera here, so it does not make it easy. And my hand's going to start getting right in front of everything, so I'm going to finish this one up. So So I finished this up. So I've got my motif going all the way around, and now I'm back at this point. Now, after doing roughly 20 of these flowers and kind of trying to figure out different ways of going about doing that where I didn't have to cut my thread so much, I found a couple of different ways that worked quite well for me. So I'm going to keep going on this, and from this point I'm at the perfect starting point to create the large motif or the large petal stitching area around here. So that'll drop me back into here. I'll do it around here, go back around over to here, and finish up back here, and then I can come back in and I can work on my petal pucker. That's what I call them. I don't know what they're called, but they're the little petal puckers. So they kind of make that inner petal section here look like a plant. And I can come back and do all those, and then I can go back and start with working within that and filling that in, and then I'll probably come back and do the petals here and then work on that. Because once I finish all the petals going around, I can come back in. Still haven't cut my threads. I know, lots of an explanation. A little too wordy. But it's been a long day. So that's what you're all getting. Okay, so I'm going to get started on this one. And so to start off with, again, it's the same thing. I'm going to start. I've been actually working a little bit more. Oops, I'm going to take you off of my settings control. On coming up in the center, so just bear with me for a second, and then setting it up so I can do this. And yes, there are times that I actually do move my rulers, and I move my rulers to keep things consistent with the look that I'm going to get. So now I'm going to come up in here. Attempt to stitch in the ditch, because I swear I'm not good at that at all. So I use my big 4-in-1 for the large arc. I use the small straight for the top part. I use the same piece of the curve on my 4-in-1 mini that I used to do the petals down here for the arch up at the top. Let me do that real quick. There we go. Oops. Straight edge back down, throw a little stitch in the ditch here, and now I'm at the same starting point that I need to be at to come back down to the center of this. And I'm not going all the way down here like I did when I originally started. I think it gives it a little bit cleaner look. I don't have quite so many lapping sections, so I do end up moving my ruler a bit for that, because although the curve arch on this is kind of specific, it's not. So it actually does have some different degrees of angle to it. And so let's see where I'm at here. That'll work probably right about like that. There we go. That worked out pretty good, just like that. I'm going to come back in. Oops. And I'm going to kind of do the same thing, but I want to come back up. There we go. And now I'll set it up to arch. Oops. Kind of half on and half off my... table. I'm going to come in here and do this little arch right here. A little bit more stitch in the ditch on this one. Oops. Kind of missed on that one, but it's okay. And now I'm going to come back down to that center point right down here. Let's see where I'm at. That actually looks pretty good right there. So I'm going to have probably a little teeny bit of lap going across in there, right here. But I'm going to try really hard not to. So let's just take a peek at that one as I maneuver myself all over the darn place in here. Let me come up just a bit more. There we go. So what I did there is I just kind of tried to track that little teeny snippet right there so I'm not creating a multi-overlap. And then I can come back in here. And there we go. That looks pretty good. So I don't know if you can see it, but it comes up nice and straight and even right there. So there you go. I'm going to continue on with this one, get this done. Okay, so now that I've finished the outlines of all of my petals, now I'm going to come over, stitch in the ditch along the square here, and kind of come in and do my little petal puckers. And I'm going to use my small ruler to start with that one. Oops. There we go. And this is always a fun part right here. There we go. Now I'm going to come down. There we go. And so they're not, you know, they're not perfect, but nature's not perfect, but nature's perfect. So just, I'm like, I just go with it. So all I'm really doing is I'm coming out, and then I'm trying really hard to backtrack in the same line, and sometimes I do really well at it. It's like meh, whatever, but that's okay, because again, once everything is all done, once it's washed and that wonderful crinkle happens, no one's really going to notice any of that. So just keep moving forward. Each time you do it, you get better and better and better. Perfect. Okay, and now I'm going to work on my pebbles that are in the center of this. And to do that, I go from my 11 stitches per inch up to my max on this machine, which is 16. And the reason is if you try to do a really small pebble with a large stitch like this, it starts to look more like an octagon or a pentagon, or it's not rounded, it's a little bit more squared off. So when you go with a much smaller stitch per inch, it's going to help the circles look more circular versus, you know, octagonal. So let's just see how I do on this one. Still working on the pebbles. I don't know if I'll ever perfect them. bunch of little pebbles all in the center of that. So that worked out really, really well. So now we're going to move on to the next part. At this point right here, I could, you know, kind of trace in this line back up to this point. Not as easy as it necessarily sounds. So I'm just going to cut my thread at this point in time right here. So I'm going to kind of tack it real quick, pull my thread up, and do a quick snip. There we go. There we go. Change. I need to change my stitches per inch back. This is the hardest. It's the hardest part at this point in time, is remembering to do that. So now I'm going to start up at this corner. I forgot to do one incredibly critical thing. I have to mark the center of all of these. So I have to mark the center of every one of these 4 going around here on all of these flowers, because that is my point that I go to. Okay, so I grab my ruler real quick, and I'm going to come up here and mark these out to about the center. So I'm just leaving just a tiny little dot in the center of all of these, just so we can see where we're at. And it's just got to be pretty darn close, but not perfect. I know you can't quite see what I'm doing, so let me zoom out. Oops, wrong way. Let's go like that. We come in here, and that is about right there. There we go. And one more. I have to reach up here. Here we go. So I'm just putting a little teeny dot right there. Once I start stitching that out, you're not even going to really see it. So now that I'm up here, let's zoom back in a little bit. So hopefully we can see what I've got going on here. So again, I'm using my 4-in-1 mini because for me it makes the perfect arch going up to that part, and I've got roughly 1/4 inch away. There we go. That looks really good. I'm going to change positions here so I'm not right in front of everything. Oops. And then I'm going to come back down. Need to be 1/4 inch off of that, right about there. Perfect. So now what's really fun about this is that when it's done just about right, this curve of this petal meets this curve of this, and it looks really nice coming back all the way around. But I have to finish this motif, so I actually have to come up here, stitch in the ditch all the way back around, and then again change my stitches per inch and do some fill-in. So yeah, and that is working out really quite, oops. Someday I will, another someday, there's a lot of those. Oops, I'm gonna cut this real quick. I will get the hang of stitching in the ditch. I seem to be off by like a 32nd of an inch. That time it looks pretty decent, so not too shabby. All right, now here comes the fun part. Stitches per inch go back up to 16 because I'm doing a really, really tight meander or stippling. Depends on what you want to call it. So let me get rolling on that. And so I just kind of cross over right over in here. Now, when I first started off, I kind of machine kind of got a little away from me. I didn't have a really tight grip on it, and it just kind of slid. So I may just end up plucking that out real quick because it's right on the color, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll see if I can, I don't know. There we go. Now, let's take a peek at that one. I'm going to cut all my threads off here real quick. Oops. All right. What do you think? I think that looks pretty good. I think it looks pretty good. Like it. Okay, so I'm going to keep going on this one. I'm going to finish this up, and then we'll move on to shifting the quilt and getting our next set of flowers done. All right, y'all, this is it. This is the last flower that I need to finish the quilting on before I move on to my next kind of like semi-secondary pattern. And what I've come up with on this particular quilt is once the flower is completely finished, I'm going to work on having kind of a semi-abstract leaf come out of each quadrant, but coming, you know, up in one, down in the other, or down in one, up in the other, you know, however that's going to work out. So on the edge here, it's just going to be the one coming up. On the top again, also just one coming up, probably a little bit, kind of a little bit fatter. Whereas on the side, it'll probably be, I'm going to try to scooch over here. So on the side, I'm looking at doing, you know, either a leaf coming up over here and then another one coming in down here. And I've done a little mock-up of one on the quilt itself. I wasn't 100% sure I was going to like it, so I only did one. And I actually like how it looks. So I'm going to, that's my next step, is I want to get the flowers finished first, and then I'm going to go back and do the leaf pattern. I kind of wish I would have figured that out early on, but at the same time, I can concentrate on the flowers. You kind of get in a groove when you're doing one particular item, and then, you know, kind of finish that up, get that all done, get all the movements and all the textures and everything done, and then move on and concentrate specifically on the leaves. So here's kind of that little motif, that leaf pattern that I was kind of referencing. And I like how it looks, and I think it's going to look really organic. And I think it'll work out really, really well with everything. I've only got the two done, and a little bit of hint of yellow is yellow chalk. And I just haven't wiped it off yet, so it's still kind of sitting there. All right, so I kind of changed my mind a little bit. I'm going to come back and do the leaf patterns a little later. I'm going to actually start on my feather border for this quilt. And in order to do that, I need to start, for me, I need to start all the way at the bottom. And this is going to be one of those instances where I've got to shift the quilt so that I can work on this strip right here. So I'm going to have to shift it over a bit. And I will actually be tacking on one of my side leaders and some extra batting. And I always use the extra batting because it just helps it clamp and hold better. I don't like, for myself personally, for what I'm going to be doing, because I'm working in the border, I want kind of the whole edge to be tight. So I don't want it to be, with the bungees, it has a tendency of being a little too floppy for me. So I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so first things first, I need to shift my whole quilt all the way up. And as I do that, I'm going to roll it to some semblance of a degree. I'm going to try to roll it as I go. And a lot of times what I'll do is I will throw a clamp on here for just a minute until I can get everything caught up. There we go. And this is the first time that I'm actually getting a decent look at my backing too, to make sure that I didn't get a whole lot of I tried really hard to not get a whole lot of puckers in that one, so fingers crossed. Okay, keep going here, and we're gonna clamp and hold for a second, just for a second, so I can get this all done. The only downside for doing it this way is that I'm going to have a lot of quilt on my throat. So, a lot of little stray threads. So I got a lot of trimming that I'm going to need to do there too. Oh, is that the end? That's the end. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of get a feel for where I need to be on this one. Hold on. So now what I need to do is I need to get this set up so that I have my edge leaders, which are, they're little itty bitty guys. They're like right here. And so look, for me, it doesn't matter. Sew fast guide, pin line, it doesn't really matter. I just need it to, basically, I'll probably pin it on, including the bit of batting. That's what that stuff's called. So let me grab a couple 3 pins here. Oops, dropping things everywhere. And I'm gonna go okay, so this is just to stabilize it, to keep it from bouncing as I'm trying to do the feathers. And I do a feather, yeah, I don't have any extra batting right in front of me, so I'm going to use one of my old, it's just microfiber cloth, and that'll work perfect because that'll help. Okay, I don't want it to be pulled so tight that it pulls it out of, you know, any type of squareness, but I need it to be tight enough. That looks pretty good, so that it holds it. And then I'll start way down here. So, debating as to whether or not I want to take my ruler. I may take my ruler table off on this one so I can get down further. Let me think about that one. So I've zoomed in a bit on this one so you can kind of see, okay, and I'm hand holding this, so bear with me. So you can kind of see this line right here, right? So it kind of starts and it goes up. And it's just a simple crease that I've made using this guy right here. And it's super, super pretty, super soft. It's a really nice wood marking tool. And what I really like about this is I don't have to worry about the yellow chalk, the erasables, the water erasables, the heat erasables, or any of those leaving marks on the white fabric. So this is just a nice crease that will go away as we quilt. Okay, so I have repositioned my quilt again. I am all the way down. My ruler plate is kind of touching my front bar here. I still need to put my front bars on, but I need to finish marking the next section of this quilt. And you can see that I'm kind of right at my dividing line that I had before here. So in this case, because I can't get any closer than directly behind my foot, I'm going to just eyeball it. Not as easy as you think when you've got a camera in front of you and you can't reach anything. So let's just see what I can do here. We're going to kind of come in. Okay, and I'm now at the end of my ruler plate, so I can't move anything because my needle is down. I'm in the position where I need to start. And this is kind of how I do. I'll see if I can do a quick video on how I move everything forward for me to work on. But I grab a ruler and just kind of extend my ruler base back here a little bit. And I'm going to come in and just ever so slightly curve up. And there we go. And now, again, in order to make this particular feather work, I now need to intersect. Yep, let me move that ruler because I'm right at the edge of my ruler base right here. So I'm going to come in and just kind of do a line right there. So again, these, I don't know if you could actually see what I did. You can see a little bit of it kind of coming up here. I'll see if I can get a better angle on that. And what that does is it gives me this nice little, I start right here. I've got a little curve that comes up and then it shifts directions again. So the overall look is kind of like this. Let's see if that makes a little sense. And I really like doing it this way. To me, it breaks it up a little bit so I can kind of stop at those intersection points. So I really like just kind of cruising along in that particular way. Now it's time for me to get rolling. Okay, so I have finished the one whole side on this feather in the border here. So now I actually am going to start all over in a nutshell. I'm going to come up, I'm going to remove my quilt because I need to rotate it so I can start here and work my way up. I'm kind of winging it as I go. So what I've done is I've done this motif kind of in the corner here, and I've finished off a rotation here, and then I'll be starting and because I'm rotating my quilt, I actually cut my thread. I'm going to be starting back here and doing kind of a similar rotation, but from here. And then I'll be working the same style as I did there. So let me get this guy completely removed and rotated. And this is going to be fun. This thing's getting heavy. Funny how that works. Okay, so I'm going to just drape it a bit and roll it. So let's start here. I'm going to keep rolling until I get all the way down to a starting point at the bottom. Okay, so I've set a front clamp and a back clamp. Now, like I said, this is a really big quilt, so there's a lot of weight off to this side. So a lot of times I'll just kind of lift it up a bit just to kind of, that ought to work. That should work fine there. So let me get the other clamps on, and we should be good to go. Okay, so I have my clamps all set, and now, again, major bulk on this quilt. It's going to be under the arm here. And this is always a fun part, because there's a little bit of extra weight that you have to contend with. But it goes, for me, it actually goes pretty quickly. Oops. I can go in, I'll get a couple of inches done, like roughly a foot, I think each time I can do. So this is obviously this is the Unique 19, and it gives me about 16 inches of workspace in the throat, because I have to contend with roughly 3 inches back here. And then because I have my ruler table on, I've got roughly 3 inches in the front also. So it's something to be aware of. A lot of people mark their quilts, which is fine. You can absolutely do that. I think what happens is the more you quilt, the more you get familiar with your frame and your machine, the more you figure out what your limitations are as far as space. But I mean, again, overall, I absolutely love working on this. It fits in my space. I have a really small space. I don't have room to expand. And this, I'm actually getting to where I feel comfortable working kind of a block by block situation. So I don't do a lot of edge to edge quilting. And if I do, I send the quilt over to a friend's house. She has a long arm, and I can go in there and do the whole computerized edge to edge thing. And I'll do that on donation quilts and stuff like that. But quilts that I'm working on for family, friends, gifts, or consignments, I love the whole process start to finish. And I love doing the custom quilting. I don't quite quilt things to death, but I'm getting more and more comfortable with it. So I'm adding more and more quilting. This one's actually going to have quite a bit of quilting on it, and it's getting heavier as I do it. So let me keep moving on this.